Welcome to Alternative Dog Moms Podcast. I'm Kimberly Gauthier, the creator of Keep the Tail Wagging. For the past 9 years, I've been blogging about raw feeding, pet wellness, and life as a crazy dog mom. I've seen massive improvements in my dog's health since I started raising my dogs naturally, and I'm passionate about sharing my experience to help other pet parents.
I'm Erin Scott. For the past 9 years, I've been researching and learning everything I can about healing cancer, allergies, autoimmune, and mystery illnesses in both my dogs and myself. And I can't wait to share with you everything I've learned on this journey. As the Alternative Dog Moms, we're bringing you all the latest dog health news that we're following and sharing the tips, tricks, and resources we learn along the way. Now, let's get started. Hello, Kimberly.
Hello, Erin.
How are you?
I'm doing really well. National Raw Feeding Week is over, not because I'm done, but because it's over. I'm still editing my 90-minute video with Rodney.
Oh.
And so I'm going to eke those out every few days. But otherwise, I'm so happy that it's over and I don't ever want to do it again. It was way too much. I say this every single year, but I just can't.
I think I've watched everything. I have not watched the Crazy Cat Ladies because I don't have cats, but I might end up going back and watching them at some point just because I like learning this kind of stuff, but I've watched everything else. I
can't remember if it's part 1 or part 2 that you need to watch because there is a funny, is it? It's part 2. It might be part 1, but I think it's part 2. There is this funny part where we're talking about treats. And Jay mentions quail, that they have a place where they go and they can get whole quail. And I had a big jar of Real Dog Box sitting on the table next to me while I was recording. And so I grabbed it and opened it and pulled out a whole quail that I got from Real Dog Box. And what's so hilarious about it is that Jay is sitting there like this because she doesn't want to see it. And Adrian is leaning way into the camera with this huge smile on her face, like, show me. And it was so funny. So yeah, that's a good video just because those two are really funny. But also their supplements can be used for dogs as well. So they have some really amazing supplements. One is Catalyst, and I give this to my cat, but I also give it to Rodrigo and Scout. And they have a B12 supplement. None of my dogs need it, but I'm just proud of it. The fact that they have a B12 supplement.
I actually give Nino B12 to help with his digestion.
Okay, there you go. So they have that. And so I really like their products. I really do. And I've been a customer for years, even though I just have, the cat.
Well, I will probably go back and rewatch it. Number 1, because you had said to, but number 2, just because I just want to know everything that there is to know about everything. So I will watch it.
I know. So, and I had so much fun today talking to Dr. Lori Kozier and I told her like everything that you had to say about the event. She said so many things went wrong. It was insane. She spent the entire time just putting out fires. And I was like, well, FYI, Erin only noticed 2 things, when Karen had to help get everyone checked in and when the alarm kept going off. And she was just like, and she told me that the check-in was because the room with everything in it was locked and the hotel lost the key.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah. And eventually her assistant went and just broke into the room with a credit card. And I'm like, that is so cool. Oh my God.
I should have had my husband there. That's one of his many talents.
See, there's that. And she said the alarm, she's like, I guess there were some kids at the hotel too. And she thinks that they kept pulling the alarm.
Oh, okay. Because there was like a high school event going on. Mm-hmm. And so the first morning when I went down to register, for the conference and get in line, there was like massive amounts of teenagers everywhere. And I was like, I need to go to Starbucks first. Luckily, when I came back, they were all gone.
Whenever I'm around a lot of teenagers, I feel so completely uncomfortable.
I feel so old. Like, I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I'm like the old lady
I
now.
don't understand what's happening.
Yes.
My stepson, he cracks me up because he'll ask me questions about things and I'll just look at him like, I'm not one of your friends. I don't know what you're talking about.
How old is your stepson?
He just turned 25 this past week.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, he's grown.
Yeah, my nephew is 13 and he's just getting into that, angsty teenager is embarrassed by everyone and everything. And
I was lucky because since I'm the step and I got to be the fun parent because I didn't have to do any raising.
Right.
He had parents, so I got to be the fun person.
Right.
So he never did. He always liked me. But there was one time where he ruined our evenings. It was our date night and he ruined it because he got into a fight with his mom and came and stayed at our house. And I was just sort of like, and I made him call his mom and apologize to her because I was like, well, you can go out and ruin our date night with us, but you have to call your mom and apologize first. And so he did. And then we went out. But he's always been like the coolest kid. His angst, well, his mom would probably say something 100% different. But my experience, his angstiness lasted 4 months.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah. And it was just like where he was really cranky and on edge. And we were like, what is wrong with you? Type of like, wow, he's so mean. And at one day he was just being a jerk and he came and sat next to me. And I was just like, I don't want you sitting next to me. You have been such a jerk to us all day. You have to go watch TV in the other room. And he was just like, really? And I was like, yeah. And he stopped being a jerk. He just stopped. And I mean, and every now and then he would say something kind of snarky, but it was more of his personality and his dad coming out.
I'm pretty sure I was angsty from like 1994 to about 2010.
My angstiness ended when I was about 49. Maybe 48.
Yeah, I was about 30, I'd say. That was when all the therapy finally kicked in.
Yes. Well, it's like, yeah, because I was telling someone of my sister-in-law is going to therapy. And she's in the happy beginning part of therapy when you're like, it's working. Where it's like, you haven't even started yet. You guys are just getting to know you're getting off on sitting in a room and having someone just pay sole attention to you and wanting to hear
and
your
validate
stories.
You.
Yeah, exactly. This is the easy part. But when I told her that I was in therapy for 5 years, it was just sort of like, what? And I'm like, yay. It's like, talk to me in 5 years about how you feel.
I highly recommend it though.
Yes. Oh my God.
Everyone, like,
definitely.
It's been one of the greatest things that has helped me in my life to actually enjoy life and be a happy person and have gratitude and appreciation for all that.
Well, and how to handle my triggers. I mean, that was like the biggest thing that was when I learned the word trigger and, identifying them and walking around them and maneuvering through the world. It makes life a lot easier. That's for sure.
Yes, and now when I see things on social media that I think are annoying, I'm like, oh, I am triggered by that.
I know exactly. I get a kick out of it. Or I'd say things like, oh, I triggered her. Like the woman who blocked me today. I very much triggered her. So did you see my thing on social media? A person from a MLM reached out to me.
Yes, I did. Yes.
And was not happy when I was like, they were like, hey, I got this thing. What do you think? And I was like, it's not something that I would buy. Well, why? And I explained why. And I was like, I wouldn't even promote these things to my followers because it's a company that sells kibble and I'm a raw feeder. And she was furious. And, and she asked me to, explain myself. And I was actually typing to explain why when she blocked me. So stupid me went over to her personal profile just to say, no, I'm not. I'm just saying that, hey, this isn't for me. I didn't mean to offend you or anything. And she just said, I don't need negative people like you in my world. And you're too stupid to understand how good this food is anyway. And I was just like, okay.
Honey, you got to work on your marketing pitch there.
I mean, it's so great. At the time, I was just sort of like, this is horrible. Why would you? But then the more I think about it, the more I'm just like, wow, Wow. And so many people, I went over to the Pottery page just to read the comments, and I just see so many comments of, like great food or great products, but then sprinkled in, your reps need some work on customer service. And it's not Pottery, it's not the company, it's the industry, the MLM industry. I don't, have you ever done an MLM before?
No. I mean, I'm familiar, I've had friends and we've had parties and things, but it was not for me.
I wish I would have recognized that it wasn't for me. I've tried MLM so many times. I tried Pottery when it first came out. I tried Life's Abundance. I tried Young Living. I tried Dog is Good when they came out with their MLM. And I lasted like a few months with each of them because I'm not a salesperson. I'm not interested in that.
I think I technically was a Young Living distributor, but it was just so I could buy things at cost. I never did it, pushed it on anybody.
Yeah. By the time, I think I ended up with one person signed up and I didn't know what to do. And it turned into one of those Sex in the City moments of, can they see me? It's because I'm not here for that. I just want to buy the oils. So yeah, it's with the training, I'm sure it changes depending upon who you're working with. But I know that in the beginning, when I was for instance, when I was with Life's Abundance, I mean, I had calls and I talked to people, but I didn't actually have any real training about how to deal with sales and how to talk to someone if they said no or showed that they didn't have interest. What do you do? And the best way to promote myself. Back then, which was still, I mean, Facebook wasn't new, but this was 10 years ago. And my blog was brand new. And back then people would say things like, go and find the breeders in your area and send them emails and, basically spam them with information. And that's what you want to do. And you want to do this. And I think some people they had a community, because it seems like people who are really good at MLMs, they have a really good social community where they can reach out to so many different people. It's not just on social media.
It's for extroverts, I determined. Yes. And I'm not an extrovert.
It truly is. I mean, because I don't want to do parties. I don't want people at my house. I don't want to go to someone else's party. I don't want to teach anyone how to do anything. I just want the oils at a good price.
Right. That was how, yeah. And I think because I didn't buy enough, I was kicked out or something,
I was kicked out of Young Living because on a blog post that I wrote about the oils that I ordered, I included 2 books that I ordered off of Amazon that Young Living didn't approve. And so they told me that I either needed to take down the blog post or change the books to books that they approve, basically their books. And I was kind of no, because this is my blog. And so the sad thing was, I think that the people at Young Living, at least at the time, I don't think they really understood social media or blogging, because they kind of thought bloggers, they were reaching out to a few bloggers and saying these type of things. And people are like, yeah, no, that's not how this works.
Yeah, that's not how any of this works.
Yeah. So what they did is they went to my social media and flagged anything where I mentioned Young Living as copyright. And so I got a message from Facebook saying, hey, you got all these flags. And so I just went and I think I ended up speaking to someone at Facebook, because I was just here's the proof. Here's my account with them, and I don't know what they're talking about. I purchased these oils. They're mine. They belong to me. So I didn't have to take all of it down, but anything that had any type of, because they used to give us images that we can use. So all of those, I had to take all of those posts down. And so I did. And yeah, it got, I won't say it got ugly, but it got very uncomfortable with my back and forth with Young Living. And I eventually had to I was able to get to their corporate offices and talk to someone. And I was just she was like, what do you want to do? I was like, I want you guys to leave me alone. And I want you guys to shut down my account, because I want to be able to just write about oils because I want to. It's if I have to buy them through another person, then I'll just do it that way. And so she did. She took care of it right away, and I never heard from them again. I also stopped buying their oil. So
yeah, I mean, now we have Animalio. So
I know. I know. I just wrote a post last night about Animalio. I love those oils so much.
Yeah, since I primarily use it with the dogs, I just feel very comfortable using them. So,
do you have any favorites?
Well, we use Away for, ticks and, when we go outside, and I use it on myself too.
Yeah.
That's probably the one that we use the most. I know my husband likes to diffuse Sunshine in a Bottle. In fact, I think we have that diffusing right now.
Me too. That's in it today. I woke up today like it's a Sunshine in a Bottle day.
And we bought the system. Is it Aroma Boost?
Aroma Boost collection?
Yeah, but I'm not good about doing it regularly. I know. I
had to make a schedule. It's every Monday for me.
Okay.
And if I have it every Monday morning, then it's every Monday morning after breakfast. And I have to have it in the living room. So I have all my oils are in a room.
Yeah, because it's a lot of, yeah.
Yeah, I have to have them out so I can think about it.
Yeah, because Tim will yell at me if I leave things out because he hates clutter. And I'm like a big clutter. Like that.
That's why I have these around the house, these little cute dishes. Yeah. And so I put things.
Your Ray Dunn.
Yeah. Yes, my Ray Dunn bowls.
He says I'm like Pigpen, but not with dirt, with like stuff. It's like I have like books and notebooks, and I get an idea and I write it down, and and there's like scraps of paper everywhere, and I have just stuff everywhere.
So let me just show you now that these are Post-its where I wrote things out. I have Post-its all around the house. I have notebooks all around the house. Sometimes because I usually sleep late and stay up late.
That would be my preferred schedule.
Yeah. And so when Johan gets up in the morning, I sometimes wonder what he thinks about the state of the living room. Because last night was an essential oil night. And so there's essential oil books out and all these things. And so, it'll be an essential oil night again tonight because I need to finish up that post. But yeah.
Tim always says that like the house looks like my brain exploded. Because it'll be like podcast stuff here and books over here, and then like something I'm looking at, and and it's just like anything that's going through my mind right now. There's some sort of stuff everywhere about it.
That is me. Well, I was going to say behind you, but behind the camera is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 boxes of things that I need to open up and deal with. Some of it will be for review. Some of it is just for my dogs and I'll put it away. And I have one box of a hoodie that I need to ship off to a follower. And so it's just like, eventually I'll get to it all.
I understand.
I will get to it all eventually. So I had an interesting discussion on my page this past weekend about the homework we do. So if we get a serious health diagnosis, if you get one with your dogs, do you go and then start Googling it to educate yourself about it?
Oh, absolutely. And not only do I Google, but through my job for the last 20 years, I do a lot of medical research. So I use PubMed pretty regularly.
Oh, yeah.
So if it's something really serious, that's where I go. But I'm always sort of trying to back up stuff that I learned from Googling by seeing if there's, medical research literature about it.
Yeah. And so like you are using PubMed, I use a site called Healthline. They have a lot of really amazing articles and they back up everything they say with links to the study.
Yes.
And so it's my way. If I know I want to study, like for instance, about krill oil, I'll go to their website, find out what they wrote about krill oil, and then follow the study and read up on that. And oh my gosh, it's overwhelming and a ton of work. But do you ever present what you learned to your vet?
Oh, absolutely. I've had mixed results with that in the past.
Yes.
But, my dog Lucy, who was my first dog, she had a very rare illness called insulinoma. And when we finally got, it took us months to get the proper diagnosis. And I got into multiple arguments with our old conventional vet, just trying to get the right diagnosis because I didn't really feel like I was being heard about what was going on. And then they were recommending things that if, quite frankly, if I had given her the medication that he recommended, it would have killed her because it was not the right medication. And I didn't give it to her because I just, again, didn't feel like I was being heard or listened to and that this was the right diagnosis. And so once we finally did get the proper diagnosis, he had only ever seen one other dog in 20 years of being a vet that had this kind of diagnosis. So it was really I felt really up to me to figure out what we were going to do about that and to present research. And he was doing some research, and actually the condition is actually quite common in ferrets, but in ferrets it's a benign condition, whereas in Lucy it was cancer. So it was slightly different treatment. So anyway, I felt like it was all up to me. I mean, that's honestly one of like the most stressful times for me, like as a pet parent, was trying to get the right diagnosis, trying to get the right treatment. It was a year and a half of learning, for sure. Yeah. And it's really what affected me, of like that I want to have a philosophy of how I want my dog to be treated and how I wanted to be treated by my vet. And that's what led me to like going to different practitioners and being willing to drive an hour and a half to get there if I have to, and things like that, because I decided that was more important to me than going 5 minutes down the street, but running into this big mess.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because I was talking to Dr. Lori Kozier earlier, and we were talking about this topic. And I told her, it's like, I can completely respect and understand the frustration you must experience when we come into your office and we're like, so I was on Google and blankety blank, blank, blank. And she's like, yeah, it makes her job so much harder. But in that conversation, what I took away was what makes her job harder is when she is telling us that it's A, but we are so focused that it's B, but our research really wasn't enough. Like, we read like a couple of blog posts and it had a list of symptoms. We said, that's what my dog sounds like. And so now we're married to this diagnosis. We haven't really done enough research. And so she was just sort of like, it's better to do your research. She expects us to do our homework, but not be so attached to the outcome. Because I think in your situation, it's different because it was such a serious situation and you know how to do the research. Whereas I'm curious what the average pet parent does. Like, is it just a quick Google, like, what are the symptoms of, or my dog has a lump, what is he dying?
Right.
And that's the research that you're doing. Or are you reading studies and reading articles and trying to tick and tie everything together and bringing it, an envelope full of paperwork to your vet to say, this is what I've learned so far. I think that there's a little bit a difference.
So I will say, just so you know how crazy I got with the insulinoma research. So one of the things you do in treatment with insulinoma is kind of like the main thing they do is give steroids, because steroids will raise the blood sugar. And it's basically like the opposite of diabetes, where their insulin goes so high, it pushes their blood sugar down low. She was having seizures. She did not have epilepsy or a seizure disorder. It was just all caused by this tumor with the insulin. So when you start giving lots of steroids, you get a ton of other problems, right? And so it's this whole thing of trying to figure it all out. Well, one of the problems that you can have, and I'm probably going to butcher the name, but I think it's something like calcinosis cutis or something like that. And it's basically like these skin lesions that make their fur start falling off. Oh. And so I was trying to figure out why Lucy's fur was like falling off in chunks. And I found this research article by a veterinarian in Italy who had specifically found this correlation in dogs with insulinoma. So I was like using Google Translate to like email the guy who, like, the author of the study in Italy, and I'm like sending him photos of, my dog's skin and fur chunks coming off, and I'm like, is this what this is? So So yeah, like I was getting international with it.
I mean, and your story just goes to show this is why we have to do our own homework. Because I mean, I did it because there's two things going on. When I received my cancer diagnosis with Sydney, my brain froze. I honestly didn't know what to do. And so by the time I got the second cancer diagnosis with Scout, still my brain froze, but I knew what to do. I knew to start learning everything I could about lymphoma, taking notes, so that when I got in front of an oncologist, which I never happened because of COVID, but still, we talked on the phone. I had my list and I did. I had a whole list of questions. I knew what she was talking about because she, backed up a dump truck full of information and loaded me up. And it's one of those where by the time I got home, I would have forgotten everything. But because I did all this homework and research, I was prepared for it. And so she didn't say anything to me that was shocking or scary because I had seen it all. And I was able to ask follow-up questions based on what she was saying, but also based on what I was reading. Like, for instance, there was many studies, and it's one of those things where people disagree, where they say if you're undergoing chemo, and we talked about this before, if you're undergoing chemo, you shouldn't be loading up on antioxidants,
right?
Because they will protect the cancer cells as well. And so that was like a question because I found contradictory information. Some studies were like, yep, this is the case, or this is what this looks like is happening. Other studies are like, no, it's fine. So I asked her. And so she took down, well, what are you adding? And then told me what I should and shouldn't add to my dog's diet. And it's one of those where, since then I've kind of changed. He does get antioxidants now, but it slowed me down and it gave me something to think about and consider, especially when I'm new to my dog having cancer.
Right. And you do just freeze when you get that kind of diagnosis.
Yeah, it's hard because it's just like, and in your head, because we're all trained to think that cancer is deadly and people die of cancer all the time. And of course, I am the Grey's Anatomy addict. I am on my third round of watching that series. I started it up again a couple of weeks ago. And almost every episode is some type of cancer. I mean, it's a hospital. They're talking about cancer all the time. And I'm convinced that if I'm not careful, another one of my dogs is going to get cancer just by osmosis of me watching this TV show.
Well, I am a cancer survivor myself.
Yes, you are.
I didn't die.
And you did your own homework on your cancer, right?
I did a lot of, alternative kind of treatments in conjunction with my traditional treatments. And even though my traditional oncologist rolled her eyes at a lot of what I was doing, I did let her know and keep her in the loop, And I think she thought I was just wasting a bunch of money. But then she's like, well, you sailed right through that treatment. And I'm like,
I wonder why.
Again, I didn't necessarily always feel like I was sailing through it. Sailing through it to chemo to oncologist means like I didn't have to be hospitalized at any point with side effects or dehydration or low blood levels,
Yeah.
So that's, that's their definition of sailing through.
And that's what's, I would like to think that, the reason why we do homework is, you're basically, this is on your mind all the time. And it gives you some semblance of control if if you're educating yourself instead of just waiting around for a doctor to tell you what's next.
And I just think there's so many things that we can do, and it goes into that whole like standard of care and Western medicine and, and it's like, there's Eastern medicine or, it's like, I want to do all of the things. I don't want to just do like some of the things. I want to do all of the things to beat this. And because, and one of the things I kept saying to my doctor when it was me is like, I have to live in this body for at least like the next 40 years or so. That's like my plan. Right. And so I don't know what kind of side effects are going to happen. I don't know what kind of long lasting things are going to happen. Like I want to do everything I can to keep this body going. Like I don't, their job is to kill the cancer or whatever, but like I want to live in this body successfully and comfortably for another at least 40 years.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the other thing is like for me with Scout, because we were given a year if we did chemo, and we did. And now we're over 14 months from the diagnosis. So yay. And, but my thing with him was I wanted him to be healthy and comfortable during all of this. Cause I wasn't sure.
Quality of life. Yeah.
Exactly. Because I know that they say that like dogs tolerate chemotherapy much better than humans. But I still just did, especially after seeing Sydney go down before she passed on. And it was so hard on her body. She was exhausted. And I just didn't want to see Scout, who's a super active, happy dog. I didn't want to see that change in him. So I made choices that supported his immune system. And his vet is so happy because he sailed through chemo, and he actually did sail through chemo. He has zero side effects of chemo. The only side effect that he's ever had was to the sedatives when we would go on a vet appointment. And even that was something that was easy for me to fix, through diet. And, I started using, because I do the Aroma Boost collection on him, and I started adding liver boost to the whole routine.
Oh, that's a good one. Because
his blood work was, she mentioned liver like a couple of times. She's like, the liver's a little. And so I cycle him off and on milk thistle, but also I started adding the liver boost. And the last 2 blood works that he's done, the liver's been great.
That's
and
amazing.
So, yeah. I mean, and it's one of those where I don't know what I was talking about something. Food energetics in my chat with Dr. Morgan. And over on YouTube, someone was like, I don't know about this. This sounds a little too woo-woo for me. And I need to respond to her, but my thought was laughing like, oh, you're going to love me. Because this is just the start.
Well, I actually enjoyed that on some of your videos. You were talking some of the more woo-woo energy things. And that's something that I didn't anticipate learning about when I got into this kind of end of health and researching this kind of end of health. But when I started understanding why behind it, it totally made sense and has affected me and how I show up in my life and with my dogs.
Oh yeah. It's, because I'm sitting here, I'm name dropping like a mad woman today, but back to my conversation with Kosher, that was the thing is that, what are 2 things I'm doing to keep Scout healthy? And, there's diet and there's supplementation and Chinese herbs. But the 2 biggest things for him is tons of exercise and low stress. So if I start feeling agitated, if, starts getting on my nerves, I go for a drive, or I go and buy a Ray Dunn mug, or I do something that makes me happy. But to me, he needs to be happy and he needs to be stress-free. And to me, those are the 2 things that it's like, if I was trying to think of what's missing from his life when I'm thinking about, because I'm feeding raw, I don't do vaccinations, beyond the annual booster when they're a year old. They're not subjected to chemicals like in the yard or anything like that. I mean, they do live in a house with Wi-Fi, and I try to keep it as clean and toxic free as possible. But it's like the 2 things that I knew I needed to change was I needed to bring my energy to a happy place and just keep it there. It's better for me anyway. And then the exercise. My dogs just were not getting enough exercise. And so I've definitely changed that.
Yeah, I look back and I do sort of feel bad that I was so stressed out for that entire 1.5 period when Lucy was sick and we had Kahlua. At one point, both dogs had cancer at the same time. Lucy and Kahlua were sick, and they both had a hard time getting Kahlua diagnosed too. So I mean, there was just this super stressful
it's hard
time. And it's one of the things that I guess I do want to talk about, just because I know there's so many pet parents who are stressed out when you're going through your dog's health issues. And that's like probably one of the times where I felt most like alone and, most stressed out, and I didn't know what to do. And I felt like everything I was doing was wrong. And, and so I've always made it like a mission when I decided I was going to start putting any kind of content or whatever out in the world, that's one of the things I did want to talk about, just that's a thing, like that caregiver stress, is a real legit thing. And also I don't, sure, you can say, oh, you should just not be stressed out. But, you have to do self-care. Because I totally, I look back and Tim and I, we were just eating takeout every night and we weren't able to walk. Because of Lucy's condition, she couldn't really walk because too much exercise would make her blood sugar drop again. And, it was a whole, and Kahlua had 2 blown CCLs at that time and she couldn't walk far, and so that was all of our exercise out the window. And, I just kind of look back at that and I'm just oh, we were trying, but we were still there's so many things I wish we had done better or differently or had known more about at that time. But it's a lot.
Yeah, it is. When Sydney, that last 5 weeks, which I'm super grateful for the 5 weeks I got with her, it was hard because my dog was dying in front of me and I just wanted to be with her. And I look back and, there were days when we had bad days because she wasn't eating or she was feeling nauseous and I would have to, put something down or medication down her throat to help her feel better. And, it was just awful. But I had a brand new appreciation for people who do hospice for pets because it's I was this is no joke. It's exhausting. And I was tired and I still had, 4 other dogs to care for and the
and
job.
You're trying to work and yeah.
And all of those things. It's really hard. And I mean, I'm lucky because now with Scout's doing so well, I haven't had any stress with regard to his health, except for him coming out of remission, which I knew that he would do eventually. I was just hoping that I would be one of the lucky people that is my dog never came out. He stayed in remission indefinitely. And he died of old age, and he still may do that. But, I was just waiting for it. And the oncologist was so excited because she was just you got 4 months after chemo. That never happens. And, at least, in her experience. And so that was that gave me a little oh, okay, well, we're on the good side. And she keeps, promoting that as well. So I'm very lucky that, because if he were sick, it's so hard to think positive thoughts or, you don't want to, you need to take a break, but you're afraid to leave because it's how could I be thinking about myself when my dog is dying?
Right.
And so there's a lot of guilt going on.
Dog mom guilt is a real thing.
Yeah, it's so hard. And so I'm really grateful for that because right now my only thing is to manage just my own stress. And thankfully I don't have a lot of things to be stressed about. And so it's been easy to stay positive.
So I know at some point in the month of April, and I'm not sure when, but it'll show up in my Facebook memories. But I have this video of Lucy, and it was from when she was sick, and she looks all bloated from being on all the steroids. But she's out in the yard, and she was stalking a squirrel, and she's runs across the yard, towards our shed to try to get the squirrel, just like she always did. That was her favorite thing. It was her job to keep squirrels out of the yard, And I have this whole caption that I wrote because at that point it had been a year since her diagnosis. We had gone on this whole roller coaster. We had finally kind of gotten her meds straightened out. And here she was able to do her favorite thing in the whole world. And it just always makes me happy when I see that show up in my Facebook memories. And I'm I know it's at some point in April. And I'm every day I'm is it today? And I could probably pull it up and watch it anytime I want. I don't know. There's something special about it.
When it pops
the anniversary.
in. Yeah. I have the same thing with our dog, Blue, who passed away 8 years ago. Pictures of him come up and it's just always a surprise. And then that's why I'm doing so many videos of Scout, because when he's out playing with that stupid green ball that he loves so much.
I saw that.
He loves that ball. And we do that every single day. We go outside and I just pick up a ball and sometimes he'll just go to it and start barking at it and then stop and look at me. And that's okay, pick it up, throw it across the thing. And then he just chases it around and he doesn't want anyone else to play with it. He just wants to play by himself. Apollo used to try and go and play with him, but he was just not having it. And so it's just I hope that, regardless of how things turn out, of course, I hope that he becomes the success story that everyone references. But either way, it's the fact that I have those images, makes me kind of happy just to remind myself that he's doing great. Look how great he's doing. And so that I don't fall onto the negative side of he has cancer.
That's another thing that came up in my Facebook memories is from before Lucy and Kahlua got sick, we had these family portraits taken. I think it was about 10 years ago now. And so those came up in my memories. And I'm always like, that is like the best money I ever spent, was having these like formal family, me, Tim, and the dog, like pictures. And we have like a giant, one in the living room. And I'm like, that is like some of the best money I've ever spent was on those photos.
I've done the same thing. I love it. We have, a friend of mine here, she owns a business, Julie Austin Pet Photography. She is so talented. There are a lot of talented photographers in our area, but she's my favorite. And I used to have her come out every year and do a family portrait with me and the dogs. And I use it for my blog until COVID. And so once COVID happened, it's just like, all right, well, I'll be doing it. But she's always so good. And I used to just get a kick out of the pictures that she got. And so the last time she took a picture of us, Sydney, it was before we got Apollo and Sydney was still alive. And so she has the best pictures of Sydney. And so eventually I'm going to blow up my favorite one and put it into a big frame. Because it's just like, but yeah, it's just like, if you would have told me 20 years ago that that's what I'd be doing,
right?
I'd probably be like, maybe I would do that, but I don't know. That doesn't seem like something that it's necessary. I mean, because I never did it when I had cats. I never was like, bring out a pet photographer and I'm going to take some pictures. But of course, I also didn't know that pet photography was a thing back then. So
yeah, 20 years ago, I didn't even know I liked dogs. So I never would have believed it.
It's just like completely insane. So yeah, to go back to the research thing, I honestly, again, I understand why veterinarians would be annoyed with us coming in. Like, I saw this blog post, or hey, there's this guy called Rodney. So he says, I could understand, because my first vet was not a fan of that type of conversation, and he would shut me down right away. But I'm lucky enough today to have a vet that she's just like, oh my God, I saw that post too. And we can have like a cool conversation about it. And that's what's so funny. And so when I saw that post on social media, a veterinarian posted her dismay at the fact that, and a warning that not all good research or not all the information out there is valid. And I think that, of course, there are going to be pet parents who don't understand that and listen to strangers on social media more. But I think that I'm seeing more and more people who actually are doing the homework and actually doing the research. A lot of the questions I get from people today are so like blowing my mind, where I'm like, why are you asking me that? I should be asking you, because this is like, you're using words I've never even heard of. And so I think it's really impressive that, people do their homework. And I don't think it's for everyone. It reflects distrust. It just shows that, I want to know what's going on too. I want to have a better understanding of what's happening too. So I'm reading up on these things. And when you hear about these success stories where a dog beat, like, I heard stories about all these dogs that had similar symptoms as Sydney and were at the same place as Sydney was with her cancer, and they were still alive 4 years later, and they didn't have surgery. They were able to do it. And so things like that were hopeful to me. And it made me, realize that maybe we could pull it out. But, I spoke with the veterinarian and they were just like, no, and it's just too hard on her. And, there's so many different things going on. I mean, especially specifically to cancer, any other serious health diagnosis, because there's, genetics, there's environment, there's diet, there's exercise, there's so many things that can impact our dogs and whether they contract cancer or how they survive cancer, so it's just like, I don't know. So
I think it more goes to, as pet parents, we're the consumer. And I think we forget that sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it goes to, what kind of vet do you want? What kind of relationship do you want to have with your vet? And I want to go to a vet who welcomes all of my questions and who thinks
Mm-hmm.
it's fabulous that I do research, and who also saw the post that Dr. Laurie Kosher just made on the internet. That's the vet I want to go to.
Exactly.
And I feel very fortunate to have that. And I know that not everybody's in a position to be able to do that, just because they don't exist everywhere.
Yeah.
But I think, it goes to almost more like the consumer choice. Like, my vet does not have time to be making videos on social media.
Yes, I know. Exactly.
I'm fine with that.
Exactly. I would love to see what my vet is doing, how she feels about that. Cause I know my vet is so busy. And she's like, anytime that she's not spent working, she's spending with her family because she's so busy. And she has her own pets and she has kids and they're in school and she has a husband and a home and stuff like that. So she does not have a whole lot of time to spend on social media. So what she does is she chooses to use her time on social media to just be a fly on the wall. And so that's what I love is like when my dog was diagnosed with hemangio, I joined a support group and I told her all about it. And she was like, oh, and she tried to join it and they didn't allow her to join. And so she was like, I wasn't sure if it's because I'm a vet. And I was like, hold on. And I messaged them and said, my vet wants to join this group. Will you please let her in? And they were like, yeah, tell her to do it now. And they let her right in. And she just followed it along just so she could see what other people were doing, what they were seeing, what they were experiencing, so that she can look into that for her patients. And, I love that about her, that the fact that, she'd rather spend her time on social media just because she's an integrative vet. She does everything, but, she doesn't know everything. And so she wants to expose herself to things. So when things come up, it's familiar to her. And she and I ran into her at Walmart one day. And it was so funny because I didn't know we lived in the same town. I've known this woman for a decade and I did not know we lived in the same town. And so we're standing at Walmart and I'm like, why are you here in Marysville? And she was like, I live here in Marysville. And I was like, oh my God, me too. And we stood in Walmart for an hour talking about like joint supplements and Amazon, fake supplements on Amazon and all these different things. And everything kept coming up. And it was so much fun because she's that type of vet, that she's so much fun to talk to about all of these things. And her entire team is like that, like her vet techs, the visiting vets when she's on vacation, all of them are so hungry for information and equally hungry to share things. And so it's just, I go in there. She has this one visiting vet where I walked in there and she's like, oh my gosh, I was just thinking about you. And we'll just start talking about something. I just read this article, blah, blah, blah. And it's so much fun because, that's the type of relationship I want with a veterinarian. I mean, I'm not going to ever say that I know more. And, I may know more of one small thing like raw feeding. I think I know more about raw feeding than my vet does. But I think that, I count on her education and her experience to help me keep my dogs alive. And I just appreciate that instead of me going in and she just telling me what to do, we actually have a conversation about my concerns. I self-diagnosed Rodrigo with EPI, and one of the vets at her clinic was like, I understand why you think that. He does show all the symptoms. However, the test came back negative. So this is what we can do. And so we went down a different road. I basically started giving him the supplement that he's getting today. He just didn't have to have as much, but a few years later, he actually came up positive for EPI. And
wow.
So he was, and it was one of those things where it was a great discussion because it's like, well, why did he test positive now versus before? And, they were able to break down and explain everything to me. And it was just a fun conversation because again, I find this interesting and I do want to understand. And, people always remind us that we're our dogs and our cats advocates and we're their voice. And it's like, I have to have my voice in the room because I'm advocating for them.
Yeah. Absolutely. I feel like I should give a shout out to Julie's Canine Insulinoma group on Facebook, because they were a true lifeline for us when we were going through that. And again, it's such a rare illness, and there's people from all over the world in there. And I mean, they were just such a fountain of information. And actually, when I think I first joined, it was still a Yahoo group where you
No.
would get like the emails all the time. And then they
Yeah.
kind of transitioned on to Facebook. But, I was so thankful for them. And we learned so much. And, and with our veterinarian now, she never treated Lucy, but she is that type of person too, where she, when we were trying to get Penny diagnosed, like she was researching, she was asking, questions, and, and I appreciated that sometimes she's like, I'm not sure exactly what this is, but here's what we're going to do to try to figure things out. And, and she would be, emailing people she met at a conference and asking them different things. And, like I appreciate the person who says, I don't know, and I'm going to try to find out, rather than the person who's like, you should just listen to everything I said.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Yeah.
That was my first vet. Don't worry about it. It's fine. This is normal for dogs. And it's just like, okay, and then, one thing that I thought about, I have a dog, whenever he starts drinking water, it sounds like the loudest noise on the planet.
I hear it.
Do you hear it? It's like, good Lord, why do you drink water now? He's also a messy drinker. So there will be, even though he has a neater feeder, there will be water all over the floor by the time he's done. Because he's just an aggressive drinker. But, when it comes to the groups, the support groups, one thing that I saw was that a lot of times they were suggesting things or telling me things that we never covered at the vet clinic. Like with Sydney's hemangio, I learned all the foods that I couldn't feed her anymore, because it's cancer. So your first thought is, okay, I'm going to give her tons of golden place. I'm going to give her CBD oil. I'm going to give her, that's my dogs. I'm going to give her, sardines, because she needs lots of omega-3 fatty acids. And, and I learned that no, she cannot have sardines. No, she cannot have golden place. She cannot have CBD oil, or at least not when she was having an active bleed, because those products, they acted as a blood thinner, and they prevented the blood clotting abilities in the body. And that's what you don't want. And that's something that we never cover. And maybe we would have gotten there, but it was still never brought up by the oncologist or my vet. So, but it was brought up by other people. Same thing with Scout. I really worried about, the lymph nodes right in the neck. And it was other people that started, and it wasn't like they were telling me this, just as they're sharing their stories and where they saw it. That's when I learned about the lymph nodes in the chest and the ones, in the legs and in the groin. And so it's like, just because his lymph nodes here are at a normal size, are all the other ones. Because, in the beginning, it presented here in the neck. And then eventually it presented other places, but I actually didn't know, because I was just focused on the neck, and the vet brought up the other places. And so now on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays are lymph node check days. I check all the spots instead of just the neck. And that way, when I do talk to the vet, I can tell her. And our last appointment we had, she was just like, I know that, she's like, I'm looking at my notes, and last time we chatted, you were worried about his chest. And she's like, I felt that it's still there, but it's, it's steady. So let's be happy, because she's like, it went down a little bit, but it hasn't gone bigger. And she's like, so I'm happy with that. And I love that, because those are the type of, if it weren't for people bringing that up to me and me looking to social media to get more information, I wouldn't have known to ask that question. Right. And, it's only helped to improve Scout's treatment. In fact, great news. We're not at every other week chemo appointments, but we are at every other week vet appointments, because the vet now sends home the pill chemotherapy drugs with me. So I can just give it to him at home. So he doesn't have to have weekly blood works, because his blood work, Liver Boost by Animalio. His blood work has been so good for so long that she's like, okay, we can just do it this way now. So,
oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Every step is an improvement. I get it.
Yeah. It just, you got to celebrate them all. So,
Well, here's one thing I remember learning about mast cell, right? Because Kahlua had mast cell. Bone broth would be kind of a no-no because of
Oh,
histamines
yeah.
in the bone broth, and mast cells are reactive to histamines. So
Okay.
that would be that's something I
So
learned.
that's
Right?
why people were giving their dogs Benadryl.
Yes.
Okay, because I saw that in her comments about where someone said that like Benadryl, like Benadryl, and I think something else seemed to
Tagament.
be, yeah, we're like a
Yeah.
cure for everything nowadays. And I am like, a cure for what?
It's not a cure for everything. And I don't know how. See, that's something that is dangerous on social media
Mm-hmm.
because that can be part of a treatment for mast cell because of the way it activates the immune system.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you're dealing with a different type of cancer, that would not be appropriate, I wouldn't think,
Yeah.
like I understand why it's considered appropriate. And it was part of what we did with Kahlua once we figured out what was going on, because all my dogs get these strange things where it didn't present like the typical mast cell. It wasn't just like, oh, she has this weird lump and we got it tested. It was almost like this kind of systemic form of it. And kind of for months, she was having like weird things. Like she would have like weird allergy attacks. And we thought there was something weird in her food, or, all of a sudden she came up positive for Lyme disease when she never had previously.
Mm-hmm.
And like everything in her immune system started going haywire. And it turned out to be mast cell, but we only had like 6 weeks with her once we got the right diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
that was a big learning lesson too.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing that I've learned through all of this is to pay attention to my dogs and to trust my gut.
Yes.
Because I knew something was wrong with Sydney. And I that's the other thing that I love about my vet, is because she acknowledged it. And she would tell me, I believe you. And she would even show me, she's like, we're not seeing anything. And then when it was finally diagnosed, it was like, we should have done an ultrasound and we would have found it. But there was nothing that presented that seriously that we would know. Yeah. And she says that it's probably because of how she was raised and how she was fed, that she was recovering, and she was, because she would be slowing down and she'd be weird. So I would take her in, but her blood work would look fine by then, because the bleed was over. So nothing presented until her tummy swelled up. And that's when, and they immediately knew. I learned to, pay attention to what and keep looking at it. And sometimes that involves doing a heavy amount of research, even if it's just to calm my head down and make sure that I'm doing okay. Because, it's not, I'm not trying to replace my veterinarian or prove my veterinarian wrong. I'm just trying to keep myself sane. And I've come up with something. So, and I'm grateful to have a veterinarian that, is okay with that, because I think if I had a veterinarian that fought me every step of the way, I would become one of those people that lied to the vet or just didn't go to the vet.
I have a friend who has something called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It's called EDS. And she's had the symptoms ever since she was a baby, but she wasn't diagnosed with it until she was like 37 years old, that they knew what exactly was causing all of her problems. And it affects your collagens and your joints. And, it's like the people who can bend their thumb all the way back and, do all these kind of like double jointed kind of things. But she has a really severe form of it. And like she had to wear braces on her legs when she was growing up. And it was like her body couldn't support itself. But nobody ever was giving her a diagnosis of what was wrong. And there's this saying that she hears, that you hear about like in the medical community, about when you hear hoofbeats, you think horses, not zebras, because horses would be the more common thing. Yeah. And so with her diagnosis of EDS, they call themselves the zebras because they have the strange thing that nobody was expecting or that nobody was thinking of.
Yeah.
And I guess because of some of the health issues I've had myself, some of the health issues I've been through with my dogs that have been hard to diagnose are rare diseases, it does make me think zebra, and sometimes you just want that in your vet's awareness.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm doing research, is because like, I want to know all of the possibilities, even the weird ones that it might not be, because you have to know what you're looking at to be able to help your dog.
Yeah.
And so that's where I guess a lot of my research kind of comes in. Like you said, I'm not going to go and diagnose my dog myself. I'm not going to argue with my vet once we get the diagnosis if it's coming from an appropriate place and not just a I don't know, she's having seizures, she must have epilepsy. I don't know. I didn't do anything to determine this. That's just what I say. But I think it's worth arming yourself with all of these possibilities, because people aren't always thinking of the rare diseases, and quite frankly, I think a lot of rare diseases are probably underdiagnosed because people aren't considering them.
Yeah.
And like with my friend with EDS, I now know 4 other people who have it, even though it's considered this like rare disease. And same with insulinoma. I bet there's a lot of dogs out there that are older that start getting seizures and are put on the wrong medicine and it kills them. And it's like, oh, well, I don't know, they were old and they had this seizure disorder, but it might have been the wrong treatment because the right one wasn't considered. These are the things that start going through my mind and drive a lot of my research and my question.
Yeah. And I've heard that about a few, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but a few diseases where they have been misdiagnosed. And, I think like, for instance, EPI, exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, dogs were dying. They were just starving to death or being put down before they starved to death when they just need a digestive enzyme added to their food. And so Rodrigo, who has EPI, and I actually was worried, is this going to shorten his life? And they were like, it could, but it shouldn't. As long as we get him squared away, he should be fine. And he is. He's great. He's 12-year-old dog. He was officially diagnosed in 2019, but I think I suspected in 2016. And he's doing absolutely great. I just have to add digestive enzymes to his food and heat it up because he will not eat cold raw, which is fine. I understand. I don't eat cold raw either.
Exactly. Well, I had actually done a bunch of research about EPI when Lucy was sick because she started having digestive problems and she was already having problems with her pancreas. And we actually did the tests for it. And we did find like she didn't meet the total criteria for it, but we did start having to give her like B12 injections and give her digestive enzymes just because all of this was so hard on her digestion.
And that's another thing that I learned from other pet parents was the B12 injections, because I didn't realize that, certain of the digestive enzymes some come with B12 in them, some don't. And that was one of the things that, I was in this group and I'm seeing all these people talk about and I'm just sort of like, well, am I supposed to do this now? Because my vet didn't say anything about it. They just prescribed a supplement, but I was just sort of like, instead of buying the supplement through the vet, I was just going to get it through chewy.com. And I've since moved on to enzyme Diane's, but it's just, he's never had to have B12 shots. He's been doing pretty good, but I'd be curious to know he rebounded so quickly. I don't know what sign I would have had to seen. And I had them nutrient tested and they were slightly low just on V vitamins, but that nothing pointed out to B12 on its own.
Well, Nino, he's had 2 different surgeries. One of them was not our fault, but we still had to pay for it for things that he's eaten that he shouldn't have. So when we first adopted him, he came to us with a car tire, pieces of a car tire in his stomach. And so we had to have surgery to remove that. That was not our fault. That did not happen on our watch. But then he later, like 2 years later, ate part of his ball, and that was our fault. And Tim had found the ball in the yard and thought he had hit it with the lawnmower, and that was why it was missing pieces. But no, it was missing pieces because Nino had ate them. But we didn't know it for 6 more months. But so he's had. He was on Pepcid. Our vet had him on Pepcid after the second surgery. And anytime we tried to take him off the Pepcid, he would start having a lot of reflux. Mm-hmm. And, we've kind of changed vets over the last, 2 years or so. And so their new vet has been determined that we're going to get him off the Pepcid. So he's finally been like weaned down off of the Pepcid. And that's when she said, well, things like Pepcid can deplete their B12. We already know he has some digestive issues. So that's why we do give him a B12 supplement.
I did not know that. Oh, that's really interesting.
But she has this whole book that talks about and I think you can get it on Amazon, like common medications and what they like deplete in your body.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
so, like, for instance, for years and years and years, I took Claritin D, and I finally got myself off of it. And so, yeah, B12 is one of the things that can deplete from your body too. So I kind of geek out on some of this stuff.
Yeah, that is like, and full circle. Two crazy cat ladies carry B12 in their online shop. That's cool.
Well, I'll have to look up their form of it.
I know. I'd be curious to know what you think. Yeah.
Because we just kind of like, I couldn't find the dose that she wanted. So I had to buy like a people version, and I just give it to them every other day instead of every day. So if maybe they have a better version. So I need to check
that would be really cool. That is so cool. You'll have to message me the name of that book.
Okay.
Unless it is Common Meds and What They Deplete in Your Body.
It's something to that effect. It's a pretty like on the nose title, I would say.
Okay. I'll look for it because I'm really curious about that too. Because I don't do Claritin. I alternate, but I do allergy medicine every year. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I took it for like 20 straight years. Like every day.
It's not a multivitamin, Erin.
I know. I thought I needed it. It was the gluten. Yeah. And doctors just tell you to do that kind of stuff until you determine that you want to be a different type of treatment.
Yeah, it's true. So, well, next week, I want to talk to you about this ball.
Yes, the Wonder Ball.
What I learned about this ball. I have 3 of them. They're $17 each. And I'm not quite sure I should have paid for 3 of them.
Oh, interesting.
And So, but I'll tell you more next week.
All right. I will look forward to that.
Well, it's great chatting with you.
Yes, you too. Thanks, everybody.